Hey guys, welcome to my first YouTube video. The topic for this video will be pocket watch and pocket watch hobby overall. I thought I'd start with a recent addition to my collection, which happens to be this Hamilton 992B pocket watch. It's a 16 size, which is 2-inch diameter, and that is a little bit smaller than the older 18 size, which were bigger, a little bit more difficult to carry. And by the early 1900s, the size 16 you see here was more popular, a little bit easier to carry, and most of your real-world pocket watches after the 1900s were based on this size. So a little bit about the Hamilton, the 992B, and why I think this is a special watch is that in the 1930s, Hamilton, one of the folks that worked there, developed a new type of spring inside the watch that was resistant to rust, resistant to magnetism, and with the advent of diesel locomotives, they could create a large magnetic field in the environment that the railroad conductors were working, and so having something that was resistant to magnetism was important. So this watch was developed in 1940, and it had what was called the Elvenar hairspring, and we'll take a look on the inside of the movement, and I'll point that out. And it made it resistant to magnetism, which was a big plus. The other thing about this watch was they pretty much got to a point where they, when they were manufacturing these, got it to a high level of perfection that wasn't achieved in earlier watches. So essentially they could take 3 of these watches apart and mix the components and put them together, and everything would work on all 3 watches perfectly. So that was a testament to the level of craftsmanship that they achieved. And these watches, any real watch had to be within 30 seconds a week, which is about 4 seconds a day, in order to be used in the railroad. And this watch now is 78 years old, and I've been timing it over the past several days, and it's averaging about 2 seconds a day. So that's within 15 seconds. It's doing better than it had to when it was built. So, amazing workmanship for those folks at Hamilton Watch Factory in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So we'll do a review and take a closer look at this watch. So first thing you'll notice is the dial, of course, and the dial, there was different materials. Now this is called a double sunk dial, and that simply means that the second hand area and the middle here are sunken from the rest. And what that means is that this was actually 3 separate pieces that were soldered together to make this one dial. And when this was released in 1940, as was a lot of the earlier versions as well of other watches, they were made of a porcelain enamel type material. By 1948, I believe it was, in the advent of plastics, they started to move over to what is known as a melamine, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, dial. And that dial, unfortunately, because it was plastics, what you'll see is that over time they could get lots of cracks and it would just deteriorate. Another thing was, or another way to tell, is that you'll notice on this that this is pretty bright white and these numerals are dark black, and it's pretty prominent. And with the melamine, you wouldn't necessarily see the same brightness in the white and blacks as you see here. This watch has what's known as baton hands on the hour, minute, and second. And then it's got the heavy Gothic numbers here with the seconds here. They called it the track repeater, seconds indicator. So it looked like a little railroad track going all the way around. And And this was a case number 2, and it's in 10 karat gold filled, which means that there's a base metal that they start with, could be brass or nickel, and then they do essentially a heavy version of what is known today as, gold overlay. And it was pretty thick, as opposed to just a gold plate, which is much thinner than what the gold here is. This case is what's known as a crown. It's a bar over crown. So this is the where you wind it, and it's got a horizontal bar across the top. And if we take a look at this, and it's in very good shape. A little bit of wear over the years as far as some light markings there, but overall it's pretty clean. And what we can do here is open up the case. Now, the first 992Bs were initially released in 1940. This watch is actually from 1940. It's an early first production run, which means that out of the 565 or 525,000 of these that were built from 1940 to when Hamilton closed in 1969, this is, and you can look at, because all the pocket watches will have serial numbers. If you take a look here, you'll see that this has a 4-digit serial number, 6174. And you can look that up online, and it tells you that it was built in 1940. So, and some of the features of the 1940, probably up to the mid-40s, maybe 43, 44. This has the gold center wheel, and that was changed, I think, after World War II or going into the 50s. So this version has the gold, solid gold wheel. Is it solid gold? It may be gold plate. Not entirely sure. Doing some research, but it is a gold, and you can see the difference in the color there from the rest of the wheels, which are going to be brass, and they'll typically look yellow as compared to this sort of a rose gold look. These red are the jewels. This is a 21 jewel watch, and the jewels were there to basically wherever there was a moving part, opinion, whatever, that they were set in the jewel, as opposed to metal. This reduces friction and increases the long-term, it helps with wear so that they can last as long as they have. If it was all metal to metal, these things wouldn't be running today. And then so you'll see those ruby jewels, and then down in looking at the movement in the early 40s, you'll see that these wheels have damasking work on each wheel, and then vertical bars on the plates themselves. There's the 992B, the model, 21 jewels, Hamilton Watch Company, and adjusted for 6 positions, which means that when they were built, that they would test it face down, face up, all of the different positions that the watch could be in, and make sure that it held time appropriately for each position.